Welcome to a very special edition of JTV called Grill the Rabbi. We're here at JFS, which is Europe's biggest Jewish school, I believe that's correct, and we're joined by over 250 students who are here to grill Rabbi Daniel Rowe. Rabbi Rowe featured on JTV last year in the God Debate, debating AC Grayling, and he's back now to answer more questions from you. You guys are welcome to ask any question you want. We've planted some questions in the audience. Rabbi Rowe doesn't know which questions are going to come up, but we're going to see how he handles it. So, without further ado, welcome to Grill the Rabbi. Let's go. Okay, so our first question has already been planted in the audience, and the question comes from Amir Cohen Eliasov. Where are you? Raise your hand. Where is he? Over here? Okay, over here.
Our Torah is a book that is supposed to tell us what's wrong and what's not, basically. Why do I need this book to know what's wrong and what's not?
So in other words, the question to Rabbi Rowe is, and bear in mind, guys, you will be able to do a follow-up response to what Rabbi Rowe says, is why do I need a book, i.e., in our case, the Torah, to tell me what is right or wrong? Why do I need that? Why can't I just know intuitively?
Okay, so if the question is why can't I intuitively work out, let's elaborate on that. We do have moral senses. I presume that's the root of the question. I know, it's wrong to kill instinctively. I know it's wrong to hurt others instinctively. Why do I need the Torah? Well, there's several points, I would say. First of all, even though, I'm just going to stand, I think it's easier to face, even though it's true that we have some strong moral sensibilities and sensitivities, if you look across history, you'll see that things that we take to be morally obvious today were not always morally obvious. It's true we have empathy, so we know if some immediate member of kin, member of our clan or family is hurt, we want to reach out to them. We don't want others to hurt them. But humans, for example, very often are quite brutal to other types of humans. In hunter-gatherer civilizations, societies, I should say, it could mean another clan. City-states, it could mean people from another city-state, and so forth. To this day. So on a very simple level, values like, we take, for example, the most obvious human value there is, a right to life. Every child's born innocent and shouldn't be harmed. As far as we can tell in the archaeological and historical record, most early societies and civilizations would actually kill children if too many were born that year, for example, or if they were disabled and wouldn't be able to work. We see it in the writings of ancient philosophers like Aristotle. So when a Torah comes along and says something that seems so obvious, like don't kill anyone, everyone's got a right to life, everyone's created in the image of God, these were not actually so obvious even back then. That's one important aspect. A second element is that moral principles often clash and collide. Values such as the value of the individual versus the value of the family versus the value of the community, value of a society. And every civilization will pick which parts they feel very strongly about and which others they're willing to ditch. But what we do when we have moral clashes, that's the principle of Torah, is that God gives us a sense of what the answers might be, and they won't be the same always as our intuitive answers. The bases might be similar, but the response won't be the same. But finally, our intuition can't answer certain questions. How do you have a relationship with God? How do we find meaning and purpose in every tangible aspect of the physical world? Many of these things are not there. Humans did not intuitively come up with ideas like Shabbat, like resting on the seventh day. As especially the way the Torah defines it, you can't do all sorts of activities. Nowadays would translate to not driving cars or switching on smartphones. Things like that are very not obvious or intuitive. We might be able to see the benefits once they're here. That laws of kosher, that's certainly not morally intuitive. So both on the moral levels, a lot of what the Torah says wasn't always intuitive. Some of what it says is still not intuitive. And on a deeper level relationship with God terms, that's certainly not the case, that these things are intuitive. Having said that, there is no question that our moral compass is meant to serve us, is meant to guide us in many situations. And there are times when Torah does expect us to be able to work things out for ourselves in everyday situations all the time. So Torah is not there to give us all of morality. It's not there to give us only morality. Torah does much more, but in principle, in the application to societal situations, we'll be surprised how often societies will take values or prioritize values that today we're shocked when we look back and believe. And Torah is guiding us in ways that are not always consonant, certainly weren't back then, and even nowadays aren't. And also Torah is doing much more. It's trying to develop on a national level how one relates to God, how one relates to meaning and purpose in everything from the food that we eat to the clothing that we wear and so forth.
Okay, does anyone want to have a follow-up response to that? Anyone in the audience? Does anyone here feel that we don't need a book to tell us what's right or wrong in this day and age? Anyone here feel that? Yeah? We have someone put their hand up? Where? Did you point to someone, Jimmy? Yeah?
No, I put my hand up.
Oh, you want to put your hand up? Okay, go for it.
Well, as it is important to, have a base guideline for what's good and bad, a lot of the stuff it says in the Torah that are supposed to be, to-dos and not to-dos are now outdated and seen as immoral. What do you think of that?
Well, the fair question. Let's maybe specify one or two particular, easier to talk about some particular than general.
Well, for example, when the Torah says how it's okay to own a slave, and also homophobia.
Okay, fantastic. So let's talk about each of those. Let's start with slavery, okay? Torah certainly has the permissibility of owning servants, although it's heavily restrictive of what you can do with them. But I think one of the things we have to also bear in mind, and this is very important when we talk about Torah, is a lot of things that are moral possibilities today were not moral possibilities a while ago. So, for example, the principle of servitude, that someone can mobilize people to do things that they want them to do, we probably would struggle to find any civilization that didn't have some form of that prior to the Industrial Revolution. Some societies, it was what we use in English, the word slavery, which was the capacity to abuse a human being for your own good. That's never allowed in Torah. In others, it was more the servitude model. In some, it was serfdom, where the masses of people were basically servants of the nobility. But in all civilizations, there was some way of the leadership mobilizing people, conscripting people to do what they wanted for a very simple reason. Short of technology, you had to be able to organize people to labor for you. It was just the only way to do things. You wanted to build a canal. You wanted to be able to till massive parts of land. You wanted to be able to build fortifications. You had to have some form of servitude. Since the Industrial Revolution, we have machines that do the work for us. And we're able to function in a world where all servitude can be removed. And it's clear that Torah doesn't like servitude. Every 6 years they have to go free. Every 50th year everyone has to go free, and so forth. But the Torah also has to function in a world before the technological solution is there. I'll give an example that's very pertinent to us today. Somewhere in the next few decades, the possibility will emerge of never having to kill an animal, because synthetic meat and laboratory-produced meat will be as good, better, cheaper, more nutritious, taste better than anything you get from an animal. At that point, our children may turn around and go, my goodness, were you barbarians who actually killed animals? The moral possibilities are not always there before technology gets there. Torah provides a guideline of how you treat animals. You better treat them as nicely as you can, even if you're going to kill them. How you treat servitude relationships, as kind as you can, recognizing that it can't be oppressive and abusive, and so forth. But in the end, one day civilization may get to the point where it can be removed altogether. That's not the Torah being outdated. It's setting a vision of something that's an ideal and then working until that point in history of how you can maximize your relationship with it till it gets better. In terms of the second question you asked, which is about homophobia and homosexuality, there's no question that in a liberal secular ethical structure, all that will be right or wrong will be anything that doesn't hurt another human being. That's our current way of doing it. As long as there's basic levels of, we have to work out what consent is, but in principle, any sexual activity should be allowed, because ultimately the purpose of sexual behavior is for gratification and for recreational purposes primarily, and secondarily for anything else. In the Torah's model, there's nothing uniquely special about homosexuality. There's 37 different sexual activities the Torah says not to engage in, because the sexual relationship is primarily, not exclusively, but it is fundamentally based on the procreative relationship, the adult male, adult female relationship. Having said that, and therefore the Torah concentrates sexuality into that relationship, into a marriage relationship that could, or is modeled around one that could produce children. Having said that, the ability to be homophobic, namely that somebody who's inclined towards a same-sex relationship rather than a male-female one, that you could somehow not give them a job or tell jokes at them or otherwise treat them in any shameful manner, absolutely would not be allowed. One has to be very, very clear about that. What is important is this, is that in various cultures humans existed in, sexuality was seen as shameful for various reasons. In some areas, sexuality was seen principally as sinful. And homosexuality was put on a very unique and strange pedestal. For some reason, it was given a much worse treatment than all other behaviors, and it was seen as some kind of horrendous, immoral thing. And therefore, people who are homosexual were treated much worse than anyone else. In the Torah, there's 613 things that are seen as not living up to the Torah's ideal. We don't mistreat people because they don't keep Shabbat. We don't make them feel ashamed of themselves. And we have to learn to love everybody, whether they're keeping the Torah or not. None of us are going to keep Torah fully, but we have to learn to love human beings and not mistreat and not be phobic about people, no matter what they're doing or not doing, just like we do with people who don't keep Shabbat or don't eat kosher. Yeah.
Out of interest, what do you think motivates homophobia? People that are actually don't hate or scared or fear or dislike people that are gay. What do you think motivates that? Do you think that comes from things that they in their religious texts, or actually it's just we've seen it we see it in secular societies? Nazis were homophobic. Where what's the motivation?
Yes, I'm not sure if it's interesting. There's a lot of research on the psychology and sociology of it. You are right that in some religious societies it's been placed on specific pedestals. There were certain parts of Christian Europe that made homosexuality some kind of uniquely terrible thing. At the same time, there was communist countries that are very non-religious that are extremely homophobic as well. Why it is, I'm not sure. It could have all sorts of subconscious or conscious psychological things. It could just be that someone who's heterosexual just, and is naive or ignorant, just thinks, my goodness, there's something got to be very strange about. It could be the sense of people saw that family continuity depended on sexuality being constant. I don't know what the reasons were always in every case for it, but I know there's a bit of a debate amongst historians and psychologists of what possible factors there are in producing such. And it's not in every society in the world. Not every society is that way at all. And there were societies that were extremely liberal sexually, some that aren't liberal sexually but are very tolerant of those that aren't, and so forth.
To stay up to date with the latest JTV content, if you're on YouTube, click subscribe below the video and the alarm bell. And if you're on Facebook, click the like button, and under following, click see first.